We're going down starting on the 17th.
Beautiful. Well, they've had a great, what is it, winter?
Yeah.
Yeah, great weather. Excellent.
Good.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. Thank you very much. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Please, and thank you. I'm going to confirm that we have quorum on the Zoom and myself as well. There are two members of council who are absent tonight, Councillor Bosomworth and Councillor Nishikawa, and they both sent their regrets in advance. I also wish to confirm that the CAO, the clerk, and other members of the township senior management team and staff are present and on here as well with us at the same time. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement statement, please. We want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations, and their stewardship throughout the ages is recognized. Okay, a couple of quick public notices. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and the YouTube channel. By participating in this open public meeting tonight, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. It's also notable that we sought public input on this agenda. We invited that through our standard approach, which is TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca. We did receive quite a number of public comments and feedback, and I'm going to list those names that were received, and I can also confirm on behalf of council that the documents and the information that was received was distributed so that all at council has had a chance to see it. So without any further ado, I'm going to read this list. Three names: Susan Goltz and Bill and Marlene Webb gave us feedback regarding community centers. Janet Poole, Margot Fraser, Saley Lawton, Linda Columbus, Edith Brown, Edward G. Thompson, John and Emily Cadillon, Amy Fraser Koch, Barry Taylor, Gary and Susan Kinsella, Pat Ferrier, Jennifer Smith, Rita and Tom Davidson, Joanne Hammond, Julia and David Hamilton, Frank and Penny Salvatore, Jennifer and Paul Shakespeare, Richard Hammond, Sebastian Caponia, Bill Webb, Roseanne Lazowski, Frank Lazowski on behalf of the Windermere Cottage Association, Cheryl Thompson, and George Dobson gave us input regarding the Muskoka Beaches and the Goose Patrol. And the last list: Nora Fountain for the Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce, Sean Stokes, Paul and Patricia Arney, Wayne and Jack Judges, Robin Keeler, Jeanette Posabon, Stan Hunter, Rob Garriggs, Muskoka Ratepayers Association, Peter Quattro on behalf of the Muskoka Lakes Hotel, Kathy McCarthy of Hatcher's Rowing Center, and Cassandra Ford regarding the Muskoka, all gave input regarding the Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce. So that is the feedback that we received on the agenda and has been distributed, as I said earlier, to all on council for their review and understanding. I would also acknowledge that there is no supplementary agenda tonight. And without any further ado, I'm going to ask all on council to indicate if they have any disclosures of pecuniary interest that they wish to make at this time. I'm seeing none. Councillor Roberts, you're not on, so I can't see you at all. Nope. Nope. There you go. Councillor Roberts, any pecuniary interest? Councillor Roberts, pecuniary interest? You're on mute.
Don't say a word. Jen?
Yeah.
Gord, any pecuniary interest you want to disclose? I don't think he's hearing me. All right.
You can mention it.
All right. In the event that you discover during the course of the meeting that you are in a situation where you have to declare pecuniary interest, please signal and make your issue known to us. Okay, this meeting is actually a public feedback session. It's a slightly different role for all on council. Our goal here is to listen and to learn and to take information away from the submissions that delegates are making. And that's our goal. Is not a time for discussion or debate. We'll do that at a later date. Quite frankly, we're here to listen. Certainly, we would ask questions of a delegate to the extent that we need information to clarify a point or to help us to understand an issue. But other than that, we're here to listen and take notes. Staff will consolidate what we hear today and put it together in a report to be delivered to a subsequent special council meeting, which will be called as soon as practically possible after this meeting. I think we're looking at the last day or two of March, 27th of March. And at that special council meeting, the goal will be to, after consideration on what we hear tonight, to close off on this budget and have it approved through council and adopted for the 12 months or for this year. So we're going to start with a, oh, sorry, Councillor Zabit, you have your hand up.
Thank you, and through you to you, I suppose. The pickleball piece, we'd had quite a number of people coming forward asking about some consideration for the interim in this year, in this year's budget. You didn't mention that in your delegation piece at the very beginning. I just wondered if we should include that.
Yeah, a good point. Thank you very much. Let me check with the clerk. Did we get any?
Well, I believe we're just here to hear the delegates. If you want to discuss pickleball, you'll discuss it at the next special council.
But I think Councillor Zavitz is referring to the long list of.
I didn't receive anything from pickleball.
We there was none submitted, Councillor Zavitz, through that portal. Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Good. Okay, I'm going to ask Director Donaldson to walk us through a brief summary of the budget process so far and give us the highlights of where we sit today as this meeting commences. Mr. Donaldson, please. Just mute.
You didn't get it?
Okay.
Then you won't use it again.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council and the public. On behalf of the Township Strategic Leadership Team, I'm pleased to present the 2023 Draft Operating Budget and Forecast at this special meeting of council being held to receive public comment. So the annual budget is a requirement under Section 290 of Part 7 of the Municipal Act. The operating and capital budget must be balanced in the budget year, meaning that revenues are equal to expenses, specifying the amount of revenue a municipality intends to raise through taxation and the estimated amount of expenses net of user fees and other revenues, including amounts paid into or drawn from any reserve and reserve funds. The municipality's budget is prepared on a modified cash basis in order to determine the cash requirements to fund operations during the year from the tax levy. In contrast, Section 294.1 of the Municipal Act requires year-end financial reporting to be prepared in accordance with Public Sector Accounting Standards, or PSAS, and the differences between these two presentation formats are noted in the township's audited financial statements. Staff have prepared this budget in accordance with the Council Policy C-FS-01 Budget Guiding Principles, most recently updated in 2022. This policy outlines 4 key pillars in guiding the development of the budget. Under fiscal responsibility, staff prepare a budget within Council's approved guidelines using prudent estimates of revenue and expenses based on the best information available. In consideration of sustainability, staff recommend a tax rate that will support the cost of service delivery, as well as contributions to reserves and reserve funds to support current and future infrastructure renewal. The funding of programs by using one-time revenues, such as from the sale of assets or from reserve and reserve funds to finance ongoing expenses, is not in accordance with the sustainability principle. Recommended investments must also align to the township's approved strategic plan. Strategic capital investments should maximize benefits, reduce risks, and provide satisfactory levels of service, which can be characterized as making the right investments in the right assets at the right time. Ensuring transparency and accountability is achieved through the public engagement and providing adequate time for public comment, regular and timely reporting and explanation of results, and seeking Council's approval for any required in-year amendments in spending due to changing circumstances. The operating budget presented this evening also includes a forecast over the next 2 years and a capital forecast over the next 9 years, which are subject to change based on future council direction and updated information being available. Staff are proposing to expand the capital outlook to 25 years in the future to support enhanced financial planning and good reserve forecasting. In 2020, Council approved a 4-year strategic plan based on these 4 objectives. The setting of the allocation of financial resources needs to align with these priorities. Township priorities includes preserving and protecting the heritage, cultural, and natural features of the township, prioritizing desired types of economic growth with a focus on year-round amenities, cultural attractions, and ancillary services, completing appropriate studies and maintaining a focus on organizational excellence, accountability, and responsibility, and enhancing communications activities between the township and stakeholders to facilitate better working relationships. Staff released a survey for the public using Engage Muskoka Lake's website to obtain input prior to the development of the budget. Responses received from the public were shared with the strategic leadership team, and questions were included in the survey asked the public about the value of services received, gaps in services to be addressed, specific projects to be undertaken, and the overall satisfaction with the services received. Responses varied, but some themes that emerged included an appreciation for trails and green spaces, priority needs for some local roads, the need for housing, and enhancement of services in the Development Service and Environmental Sustainability Division. At the General Finance Committee of meetings of January 30th and February 1st, staff presented the 10-year capital budget and forecast by department. Committee directed staff to make some amendments, and those changes have been reflected in the budget presented this evening. Staff also presented a 10-year forecast of reserve and reserve fund balances, which contemplated the impact of a steady inflationary increase in contributions to reserve and reserve funds over the capital planning horizon. Committee endorsed the 2023 draft capital budget and forecast as amended in principle. The 2023 capital expenditure is $11,346,800 with an estimated forecast over 10 years of $99,546,900. The $11.34 million draft capital investment in 2023 is approximately a 35% increase over what was forecasted for 2023 in the 2022 capital budget, and is due to the changes in the timing of projects and some newly identified projects. Investments in roads and bridges are $5.8 million of this, approximately 50% of the total capital investment for the year. However, this capital budget is not yet all-inclusive. For example, the average investment in roads and bridges in this 10-year forecast is $4.9 million per year, which is less than the recommended average level of investment of $6.7 million as noted in the core asset management plan, which was presented to council last year. Staff have maintained this historical level of investment for the purposes of this 10-year capital forecast, pending the delivery of various future plans and studies to come before council, including the non-core asset management plan, and confirming direction from council on all service levels. As well, certain major projects that are foreseen but not yet confirmed by council, such as a new township administrative building and new garage facilities, are not yet included. Staff have estimated that as much as $50 million in new projects could be added in future iterations of this 10-year forecast. During those budget meetings, committee also approved a resolution to revise the budget guidelines that were approved by council at its January meeting. The direction provided staff to not increase contributions to reserve and reserve funds in 2023 over the 2022 contribution levels from the tax levy, and to find an additional $300,000 in net savings to the levy, either through reduced expenditures or increased non-tax revenues, such as user fees. At the General Finance Committee meetings of February 24th, staff presented a draft operating and budget and forecast by department, and pursuant to the directions of committee to achieve the reductions as noted in the resolution of February 1st, savings targets including savings targets to hold contributions to reserves at 2022 levels and finding an additional $300,000 in reductions. Committee deliberated on the recommendations made by staff, and in the end accepted $246,000 of the $300,000 in reductions proposed. Staff also proposed a number of service level enhancements, and the committee approved $167,500 in new spending related to these initiatives. All these changes have been endorsed, that were endorsed by committee, have been reflected in this evening's presentation. So this table, which appears in the staff report this evening, shows a summary of the draft operating budget. Clarifying the estimated tax noted at the end of the February 24th meeting by staff, we have updated the draft operating budget, which contains a tax rate increase of 3.3%, and that amounts to $4.13 per $100,000 of assessed property value. Operating expenses, excluding transfers to reserve and reserve funds, is proposed to increase by 5.3%, or $764,600. Non-tax revenues are increasing, notwithstanding the loss of over $120,000 of revenue from site plan agreement fees due to the recent passage of Bill 23. The increase in revenue is due to proposed changes in the fee schedule related to fire services and increased revenues in the area of building inspection to pay for a new septic reinspection services, which I'll discuss more later in the presentation. Other tax revenues includes penalties and interest on overdue property tax accounts, additional property taxes related to assessment value changes as issued by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, or MPAC, during the year, and payments in lieu of taxes, which are voluntary payments made to the township by other governments and agencies to compensate for municipal services delivered to their properties. Net transfers to and from reserve and reserve funds are slightly higher, which is related to the election of 2022. And this all results in a tax levy of $13,625,600, an increase of $596,000, or 4.6%. The tax levy is the amount that is tax revenue, and it's received by the township by applying the tax rate set by council and the assessment value on all properties as determined by MPAC. A portion of the year-over-year increase in the tax levy of $596,000, which I noted in this draft budget, is a result of an increase in assessment value. While MPAC has not resumed its 4-year cycle for property reassessment, it continues to assess properties which have undertaken changes through construction, renovation, or demolition. The portion of the tax levy increase from year-over-year changes to assessment value is referred to as being as a result of growth. The growth portion is paid by those property owners who have received a change in assessment from last year. All property owners contribute to the rate portion increase. Any property who has not received a change in assessment value from last year would only be subject to the rate increase portion as circled on this slide. So the key highlights of this draft budget, as mentioned earlier, the initial draft presented to committee did not include any changes in service levels. Service enhancements, which I'll discuss more in a few slides, were added were added to the initial draft and are reflected in the draft budget presented this evening. The impact of inflation during 2022 has created significant operational pressures, as evidenced by the Core Consumer Price Index and the Non-Residential Construction Price Index, as published by Statistics Canada. While inflation remains high early in 2023, the budget assumes that economic impacts will stabilize this year. I mentioned earlier about the loss of over $120,000 of annual revenue related to Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, and contributions to reserves in this plan that have been frozen at 2022 levels per committee's direction. The accepted reductions in contract services, minor capital projects, and consulting fees, along with the introduction of a new fee for first false alarm fire calls, are all reflected in this budget. Per council policy, all fees and charges will be subject to review in 2024. This chart breaks down the proportion of the township's tax levy for a local residence tax bill based on 2022. The rates for the township and district portion are established by each respective council, while the rates for the education portion are established by the Minister of Finance. On a consolidated basis, including the district portion of the tax-supported increase, with no increase in the education amount, the percentage tax increase this year is 2.9% on the rate, which is $16.39 per $100,000 of tax assessment. That's an increase of $16.39 over 2022. This chart shows the annual increase in tax levy and tax rate by year since 2014. The high point for the tax levy increase was 2018 at 9.8%, with an average of 5.2% over 10 years. And for the tax rate in 2015 at 7.1%, with an average of 3% since 2014. In 2020, staff undertook a review of expenses and redirected nearly $400,000 from operating costs to transfers to reserve and reserve funds, while reducing the tax rate by 1.4%. The target tax rate of the budget is based on planned expenditures, and any surplus at year end would be contributed to reserve and reserve funds at the direction of council, while any deficit would be required to have council authorize a draw from the tax stabilization reserve to balance the year. So reserves and reserve funds are held by the township, and they are categorized in 3 groups: obligatory reserve funds, discretionary reserve funds, and discretionary reserves. Obligatory reserve funds are restricted for specific use under legislation or agreement, such as development charges or building permit fees. Discretionary reserve funds are established through council bylaw and are generally held for specific capital purposes, such as roads, facilities, and recreation. And discretionary reserves are held for special periodic projects, such as special studies and master plans, the municipal election, and any unanticipated events, such as extreme weather events. Of the estimated opening balance of approximately $24 million, 1/3 are currently held as obligatory reserves and are only available for specified purposes. Around 59% are held in discretionary reserve funds, and these are to finance the majority of the capital works program. The remaining 8% are held as discretionary reserves, which are used as required to fund the types of projects noted previously. So while obligatory reserves are restricted, while obligatory reserves are restricted, it's at council's discretion and the possibility to redirect funds between discretionary reserves and reserve funds as necessary. There's an expected need to increase contributions to reserves based on the current forecasted capital program. Discussions at the recent budget deliberations focused on how best to calculate future contributions required. For illustrative purposes, this chart shows the impact on the balances of reserves and reserve funds if contributions to reserves from the tax levy remained at 2023 levels over the 10 years. While the bar descends to nil at 2030, in reality, some obligatory funds noted in the bottom segment of the stacked bar are not available for use for municipal capital projects, and therefore there would be some obligatory funds remaining throughout the out years and would not be fully depleted. But this means that discretionary reserve and reserve fund balances would be fully depleted before 2030 based on the current capital plan. Staff presented 6 operating service enhancement proposals and 2 capital service enhancements proposals as part of the budget deliberations. The positions put forth were directions from resolutions of previous council. 3 of the 4 positions are funded from the tax levy. Submissions were also received from the Muskoka Lakes Museum and Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce to increase operational funding. As noted earlier, council directed acceptance of the proposals, which had an impact on the tax levy of 1.3%. The 2 capital proposals were also included in the capital budget and are funded from reserve funds. This table in this slide notes the changes. There is a new position added to support the IT function, information technology functions, and work with the township's third-party service provider to support implementation of an approved 5-year IT strategic plan. There's a new parks manager position, as was recommended by the steering committee for the Parks, Recreation and Trails Master Plan, and a new bylaw administrative position to support the establishments of a licensing regime for short-term rentals and an administrative monetary penalties system. These positions are funded through the tax levy. As well, a new position to be funded through building inspection program via permit fees has also been included to enable the implementation and administration of the discretionary sewage system maintenance reinspection program. 2 grant recipients, Muskoka Lakes Museum and Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce, also requested and were approved for additional funding over their 2022 allocation. On the capital side, a new columbarium and some additional fleet vehicles were also included in this year's capital budget. So further to public comments received this evening, staff will summarize feedback and a report will be brought back for final deliberation and council adoption. Subject to final deliberations, it's anticipated this budget can be approved before the end of March. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Your Worship.
See that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Director Donaldson. We're just going to get the list of participants up so that I can call on them. Okay, we're going to move on to the part where we listen and we listen to the public give their feedback on what we've done so far with the budget. I'm going to set a couple of basic rules. Number one, I want to make sure that all of this input remains very respectful. We've got a lot of people to go through, and I'm really anticipating that everybody will give us their honest feedback, but do it in a very respectful manner. And I will call you out if I think that you're offside on that one in any way. Number two, everybody has 5 minutes, and there will be a timer, and I will let you know 30 seconds or so before the end of your time. And I will ask you then to wrap up so that you can get done in your 5-minute allotted segment. Number three, in order to make this move as smoothly as possible, and I believe there's something like 17. Oh, there's 17 people on deck to speak. So in order for us to move through this as expeditiously as we can, I would ask that if your thoughts or comments are already made, that you please just say so and that you piggyback on things that have already been spoken, things that have already been said. Echo, a little bit of what you need to in order to make sure we understand what you're speaking of. To the extent you need to supplement it, do that as well. But we don't need to have the same thing repeated over and over again. As I said, we're going to capture these thoughts and staff will prepare a report back to council at the later date when that is established so that we can get their input and feedback on the suggestions that we're about to hear. And the last piece is, as I said earlier, and I will repeat this, this is an opportunity for the public to speak and for council to listen. So unless we have the need to ask clarifying questions to get something specific to help understand better the point that is being made, we will simply stay silent, take notes, and listen carefully to everyone as they speak. Okay, that having been said, I'm going to quickly look at this and see if I can find some names. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to call on Mr. Furniss. Don Furniss, please, if you could kick it off. I assume on behalf of the Muskoka Ratepayers Association, but on the other hand, I'm not sure. Do we see? Where will he come from? Right here.
Here it comes.
Okay,
There you are.
okay,
Welcome.
Your Worship. Okay, thank you. So good evening, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Don Furniss, 1208 Bosomworth Road, Bosomworth, Ontario, P1L 0M8. And I'm going to comment on the capital budget on behalf of the Muskoka Ratepayers Association. The township Muskoka Lakes is over 50 years old. It was formed by the consolidation of 10 former municipalities when the province created the District of Muskoka in 1970. Unfortunately, the township inherited all the infrastructure of those municipalities who not only performed the township functions, but also district functions. And no council over the last 50 years has really had the intestinal fortitude to think, plan, or construct what TML really needed for the past 50 years or the next 50 years. Hopefully, in the first 90 days of this council, you're seeing firsthand the cost associated with keeping far too many obsolete facilities in today's modern insurance and litigation-driven environment, such as the stoves and the furnaces and accessible washroom retrofits in community centers should be an eye-opener to everyone. The MRA believes that before any significant capital is spent on community centers, fire halls, arenas, etc., a comprehensive study needs to be done to assess what TML really needs to be an economically vibrant community that is prudently run with best governance practices for the next 50 years. Unused facilities need to be sold to fund new builds, and if council wants a template, we would suggest they may want to look to Bracebridge with a new fire hall, sportsplex, twin rinks, field house, library, and a relatively new town hall and works yard. The following points are specific to this year's capital budget. Number one, the MRA's opinion, the proposed studies in capital to rehabilitate the Burgess Dam should be terminated. Spending millions of dollars on this project to garner $18,000 per year in revenue from the leasee is lunacy. The MRA strongly suggests that the lease be terminated via force majeure, that the TML work with MNRF, the SREL, to exit the water management plan, sell the water rights to SREL, and get permission to fill the mill stream with suitable material to prevent water flow, and then demolish the dam and the power station. In the MRA's opinion, this is the only logical and economically viable solution to get rid of this 100-year-old albatross around the township's neck. Number two, the MRA is dismayed that not one councillor wanted to see historical capital project detail. At a minimum, the MRA wants to see a listing of each of the capital projects with the capital spend for 2021 and the 22 budget by project, indicating those projects completed, under construction, terminated, or postponed, plus the actual and forecast costs. It's incomprehensible to the MRA this was not available, especially when capital costs for 23 are projected to be $3 million higher than they were in last year's 10-year capital plan. In order to effectively evaluate and comment on the capital spend, the MRA needs this information. We're gobsmacked. The council can approve in principle spending over $11 million without it. Number three, the MRA's understanding that a 6% annual inflation factor has been incorporated into the 10-year capital budget. This level of inflation is unrealistic based on economic forecasts and Bank of Canada projections. This will introduce huge errors into the forecasting model. The MRA supports keeping the current budget year actuals and using constant dollar projections as in the past. Of course, the township must keep in mind other factors will ultimately impact final costs over a multi-year annually updated forecast. This seems to be a much more prudent approach. Number four, with aging infrastructure, there's also a tendency to fix and patch rather than a fulsome capital renovation. Unfortunately, this usually adds to operating expenses and ultimately greater capital expenses in the end. Number five.
Mr. Furniss, you have 30 seconds, sir.
Okay, I'm going to ask the clerk, the acting clerk, if she'd put a photo up on the screen.
There you go. It's there.
Okay. This is a view of a township spent over $1 million rehabilitating a 60-year-old Bosomworth bridge. Unfortunately, two central concrete support pillars are badly eroded, rebar, and even the steel pilings are exposed to the elements. Rebuilding these pillars should have been part of the scope of the original project. Now the TML needs to fund another study, let tenders, mobilize another contractor, rehab this part of the bridge. Construction costs of this project are unknown and not in the capital budget. So I'd like to thank the council and staff for the opportunity to once again provide our brief comments on this year's capital budget.
Thank you, Mr. Furniss. Appreciate that. Certainly, that was very clear. I have no questions. I don't see anyone else with their hands up, so I'll thank you very much. And maybe because Mr. Bryden's relationship with the Muskoka Ratepayers Association, he should come on next. I see he's on here as well. Doug Bryden. Do you see him coming in? There we go. Yeah, there it is.
Yes, there we are.
There we go.
My
Perfect.
name is Doug. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Doug Bryden, 1139 Tondern Island Road. And I'm commenting on the reserves and the historical spending trends as outlined in the draft 2023 budget on behalf of the Muskoka Ratepayers Association. In 2014, the township consumed 16 cents of every taxpayer dollar. In 2020, it was 20 cents. And this year, I believe it's proposed to be 22 cents. The MRA finds this 10-year trend to be very disturbing. Secondly, the MRA for over a decade has repeatedly expressed alarm that the township has inadequate unrestricted reserves to properly maintain our current infrastructure and allow a cushion for catastrophes. However, the MRA also believes that taxpayers today should shoulder current costs of running our municipality and not be taxed to squirrel away monies that will benefit future taxpayers. Council in 2017 and 18 increased the levy by 5% in both years, specifically to bolster township reserves. This proactive action for 2 years should have continued to provide around $1 million in each subsequent year to augment unrestricted reserves. Unfortunately, tax rates for the past 4 years have been suppressed, cannibalizing monies that were intended for reserves. So today, the township's unrestricted reserves to operating expenses ratio still sits well below the average of all municipalities and what the province deems appropriate. The MRA must reiterate our comment from 2022 budget. As a minimum, we want to see in the 2023 budget, the actual year ending reserves for 2021, the 2022 budgeted reserves, as well as the 2022 end of year forecast. This has been provided for the operating budget, and we believe it is absolutely a must for both reserves and capital. In prior years, reserves were expressed in current year dollars. Future projections of funds in and out of reserves and capital requirements were done in constant dollars for that budget year. The MRA believes that accurate and responsible multi-year capital budgets and asset management plans are essential to the health and financial vitality of the township. However, our experience has been that the township forecasting precision and accuracy needs to be significantly improved. In 2017, the 10-year capital requirements were 37 million. In 2019, it was 51 million, and this year it is 99 million. If council wants to conduct an interesting exercise, the MRI suggests comparing the capital forecast by line item for the year 2028 in both the 2019 and 2023 budgets. The expenditures of 3.24 million and 7.31 million respectively, as well as the capital projects listed, provide a glimpse of the problem and the MRA's frustration. The Director of Financial Services, Mark Donaldson, has assumed a 6% inflation rate in each of the next 9 years for capital expenditures and hence reserve requirements. The MRA believes this is a major departure from the constant dollar costing model of the past and is unrealistic going forward. The vagaries of township capital forecasting history, especially going past 3 years with unknown rates of inflation, exchange rates, labor rates, provides a minimum value and introduce huge errors to any forecasting model. Our last point is to concern regarding Mayor Kelley's comment during budget deliberations, which was to reduce contributions to reserves in order to reduce the levy for 2023. Council needs to run a fiscally responsible ship. It is grossly unfair to give current taxpayers tax holidays while expecting future taxpayers to pick up the tab. If reducing the levy in this council's primary objective, the MRA suggests eliminating capital and operating expenses and not just postponing them. Thank you very much for letting the MRA provide comments on the reserve portion of this year's budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryden. Right on time. I see no questions, so thank you for your feedback. We'll move on to the next speaker. I'm going to call on Steve Rohacek from the Muskoka Lakes Association, please.
There he comes.
There we go. Welcome, Mr. Rohacek.
Right. Oh, just yeah, Brian's out, isn't
Yeah.
he?
You're still on mute there, Mr. Rohacek. Thank
There
you.
we go.
Perfect.
I think I'm running now.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Kelley, and good evening, Council. Steve Rohacek, 1138 Leonard Lake Road, number 2, speaking on behalf of the Muskoka Lakes Association. The association would like to thank Council and staff for a thorough review and analysis of the 2023 budget. The information provided was helpful in understanding the rationale and the tax increase implications presented in the budget document and reports. Overall, the association is supportive of the current budget specifically the new staff positions related to bylaw enforcement and the septic program. Both new positions will be required to support these important programs and services. We recognize that the core asset management plan, which covers linear related infrastructure, was just completed in 2022, but it is unclear if the 10-year capital budget and forecast in this budget document has been linked to the core asset management plan. We also realize that the township is undertaking a long-term transportation master plan. Further details on how these plans relate to the capital budget would be helpful going forward, and how the 25 million backlog of capital identified in year 2023 of the core asset management plan will be addressed. We look forward to seeing these results of these extensive planning initiatives. While the current 10-year capital budget indicates capital will be funded from reserves and taxes on a pay-as-you-go basis, there is 25 million in road-related capital required in 2033 and another 25 million in 2043. Layer on other municipal building and property infrastructure asset requirements yet to be quantified. It is unlikely funding only from reserves and in-year taxes on a pay-as-you-go basis is sustainable while keeping tax increases manageable. We would encourage the township to assess how it will finance the current 10-year capital plan in light of these significant future capital needs, and whether debt financing earlier in the 10-year capital plan will help manage tax increases in the future to address these significant capital events. On behalf of the association's more than 2,000 membership representing 11,000 individuals, we thank the township for a prudent and fiscally responsible budget. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Again, I see no questions, so I will thank you for your comments. And we will move on to the next speaker. I'm going to call on Nora Fountain of the Chamber of Commerce, please. Let me tell you who's like that.
You could. How much is that? Do you know?
Hi, I'll just start video. If I start to lose it, I'll cut it off. Thank you, Council. I'm Nora Fountain. I live at 1015 Kidd Street, Torrance, and I'm here representing the Chamber. I wanted to be here because work is well underway by the Chamber to support our economy and business community this year. I'd like to share some of those efforts with you, and so that the public watching can know more about what we do to better understand our value at just $62K of your operating budget. Yesterday, I was at Queen's Park with our board treasurer meeting with cabinet ministers and staff. It's something we do every year. It's for the good of the overall township. Tomorrow, I'll be on the job at 6 a.m. to get ready to greet over 100 attendees at our International Women's Day event. Our first quarter has been devoted to helping our workplaces embrace equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're holding these events on these topics because research shows us part of our staffing problem here, along with housing and transport, is a perceived culture gap. Diverse groups don't see themselves reflected here. We need to work harder at making all people know they are welcome and wanted in Muskoka Lakes. We are your key partner in working on the staff shortage problem. At Queen's Park, our board exec and I had the opportunity to discuss housing, transport, infrastructure, and staffing needs. Our board executive met with the housing ministry. I was able to get a meeting with the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development, and also transport. In fact, we have another meeting being set up with MPP, the Transport Minister, Stan Cho, later this year, and we can help lobby for your transport plan. Restaffing, we've discovered we have a seasonal American residents who want to work in the summer while they're here. It's one of our missions to try to work with governments to see if we can tap into this workforce that already has housing here, so we can have American teens work at our businesses like they used to before the digital age. In February, we produced a workshop with Corey Moore about the Township CIP program. We also wrote a letter in support of Township's request of the Rural and Economic Development Program just last week. Again, we are your key partner in economic development and marketing Muskoka Lakes for less than 0.1% of your operating budget. Tomorrow, we host that Women's Day event I was telling you about embracing equity. And because we always feel our words should also be followed by an action, we're running a fundraiser for the YWCA Muskoka programs in connection with that event. Last year, We encouraged our members to raise funds for Big Brothers Big Sisters, resulting in the first bid for a Muskoka Lakes Child in Years. We put money for social needs back into our township. It's beyond what we do for our business community. We do it with our business community. On March 23rd, we'll hold a networking event at Muskoka Lakes Farm and Winery. In fact, we have business networking events all year in Bala, Port Carling, Glen Orchard. One of them showcases the township in April, and we're hoping that we can do tours of the township offices as part of that event to open your doors back up again. Public events include a season opener event in June to drive business just before the start of the high season, a celebration of the Port Carling business 20 years, and we're celebrating 40 years of Camp Ooch and Shamrock Lodge as well. Oktoberfest Muskoka in October. We play a large role in raising funds and helping the community to organize the Bala Santa Claus Parade and other events. We have spring workshops planned like WSIB First Aid and CPR for our work crews. And we're advocating our health unit to go back to in-person food handling certification training, as our businesses and volunteer groups are very much in need. These certs expire. We're providing those workshops for them. Of course, we're supporting the Maple Trail. We're writing the new 2023 Muskoka Lakes Guide, and we wish we could afford to print more than 15,000 to fill all those red boxes on your township info kiosks. We can only afford to print 15K. We've got a full set of workshops for Small Business Month in the fall. And of course, we invite you to join us at our annual meeting, May 11th at Sherwood Inn with our guest speaker, Rocco Rossi. So on top of posting jobs, promoting businesses, answering visitor questions 24/7, running a full winter tourism campaign this year, we have lots on the go. And I hope this tells you more about what's going on in your chamberhood that drives township for township value for your township overall. And I hope it helps you understand the chamber value that we bring for that amount. I hope that we'll have others that will speak more specifically to the budget items that we have requested. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. Anyone with any questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. Through you to.
You're on mute, Glenn.
Mute. There we go. Okay, thank you. And through you. Thank you for the presentation, Nora. A question to you and to the chamber. What happens if this committee, this council does not extend the extra $12,000 that you're seeking? What impacts are there to the township?
Through you, Chair, what impacts to the township? Well, the services that we provide, visitor information services 24/7 through a variety of channels, tourism marketing. Tourism is still definitely shown as the #1 economic driver in this township. You've spent a lot of money on consultants and time in the past proving that. So we are your marketing arm. We are your additional economic development arm. So you would lose that kind of support and that you need. As for the actual amounts, like I'd rather leave that for our board executive to be able to speak to about the additional. And remember, it's not additional for us. It's the cost of providing these services. This is what it cost us last year. This is what it would cost us again this year. So the impact is that we would lose a lot of that kind of support. I don't know who else is going to do it for you. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you both. Seeing no other questions, Ms. Fountain, I think I'm actually going to call on, I think there are 3 other board members to speak as well, if I'm not mistaken. And they kind of registered all at the same time. So I'll call on Jim Hedrich if he's on as well. And then we'll follow with Randy Hyde and then Victoria Hamas, please.
Thank you.
He was on this one, so maybe try Randy.
Oh,
Oh, is he in there?
okay. Oh, there he is. Yeah.
Oh, you see him?
Oh, here I am.
There you go.
Have you got me?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. My name is Jim Hedrich from 1050 Keeler Road in Torrance, Ontario. And I want to see the council support our chamber's request of $62,000. It would be hard to find another supplier who could do so much for so little. Now, when anyone is looking for a service provider, obviously it makes sense to compare costs with other service levels of other similar businesses. In that case, we think the township would like to know what other chambers receive from their townships. In my opinion, according to the township agreement, we provide more services than any other neighboring chamber. We do much more for less money, and we do it because we care about our economy and make sure it flourishes, etc. And here's a little comparison. We pay rent where we are on Muskoka Road. We are the most visible chamber. We see approximately 800 to 1,200 visitors per season. If we compare it, here's a quick comparison. Huntsville Chamber, which does visitor information and tourism marketing, two of the four services our chamber provides. They have an ongoing town budget of $82,000 from the township. Okay. Other neighboring chambers, like let's say Gravenhurst. Gravenhurst is not as visible as we are. Their office is under the Service Ontario building on Manitoba Street. They're on the highway. They received $60,000. And if we look at Bracebridge, Bracebridge is just got to get my notes here. Bracebridge received $66,000, but they pay no rent and utilities. And where we are on Muskoka Road, we pay rent and utilities. So in comparison, for what we deliver, the services we provide, we'd ask you to consider, the $62,000. When you compare it, there's no other chamber that provides a service that we provide for that amount. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I see no questions, so we'll roll right to Mr. Hyde, Randy Hyde. I'm sorry.
The and Victoria were both in there. They just have to.
Randy, I don't know if you can hear me, but your video is on and are off, and you're still on mute. Ms. Hama, if you want to try and see if you can come in first, it doesn't matter to me which order the two. Oh, here comes Mr. Hyde.
Good evening, Your Worship, and member of council. Thanks for making the time. My name is Randy Hayden. I speak to you from 2008 Windermere Road. Speaking to you on behalf of the chamber, obviously, and as we are four of us, I'll be very mindful that we don't duplicate and have respect for time. I would like to really speak to one point, and that is our review of the February 24th budget that council is considering. And we'd like to provide some clarity that we view our role as a fee for service as compared with council determination on the increased funding request for additional services under the a la carte menu. If council's interpretation, the chamber's increased deliverable for additional funding, that is not our intent. And maybe my comments can go somewhat to Councillor Zawitz's question earlier of North Fountain. As to the value, if you will. Last year, we requested $60,000. We received $40,000 in funding. And we made a decision that we would move forward and took the approach to support and strengthen our business plan to invest in the future. The cost of doing that and the results which were delivered, and I think the results have been made quite clear, we're in the neighborhood of $60,000 hard cost. And so that's what we feel is appropriate and necessary for us to continue the drive. Well into an exciting 2023, we are ahead of plan on deliverables. Nora has cited a few items, and I think our colleagues will talk those other ones following my presentation. With the council's additional support and our marketing savvy and energy of the team, we're very confident we will maintain service levels consistent with 22. On a broader term, it would be beneficial to have a longer term understanding of fee for service, and perhaps that may be an item for 2024 MOU discussion. I know that we are back to back. You've heard from Jim Hedrich, and I now believe that Victoria, our treasurer, has some more specific items should she would like to table. And at the risk of duplicating our presentation, I will stand down.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. See no comments, so we'll move on to Ms. Hammer, please.
Thank you, councillors and township, for having us today. My name is Victoria Hammer at 1028 Buckeye Road, Mactier, Ontario. Today, I just wanted to talk about a few things regarding our fee for service at 62K. Thank you for considering our estimate to provide services again to you this year. And some of you actually requested our unaudited 2022 financials. Of course, it would not be responsible for us to share those financials publicly because they are presently under review. However, your chamber liaisons and actually Councillor Peter Kelley and Corey Moore are always shown our monthly financials at the board meetings. So Mayor Kelley was actually on our board until the fall election. We also did send you our 2021 year-end financials with the pie graphs showing you where the money comes from and where it goes, so you have a better understanding. The township portion of our revenue in 2021 was 13.9%, and it is probably going to look about the same and won't be much different in 2022. Our provincial grants that we got came in at 24%, and we will likely not be getting those grants again this year. So this may explain more about why we were able to provide 62 or upwards of 60K in deliverables last year for only the 40K that we were actually given. And I'd like to also note actually that in 2021, we were actually selected from all the chambers and boards of trades across Ontario for an award for the support we actually provide businesses through COVID. And in the 2022 Gravenhurst Chamber actually won an award for support local support. We nominated them for that award, and we actually got to share in those honors. And the province actually saw the value of our campaign, and they supported it with $150,000. And they believe that was a reasonable amount for the campaign like that, and with that enormous impact that we were able to provide the region. And our township economy continues to reap the rewards for ongoing shop local support that our chamber really wants to provide. One councillor told us they wanted to better understand our financial modeling. And we're actually so glad that you asked. Our year end is December 31st. So we submit our service estimate to township in September, but it's not until well into the first quarter of the next year that we get any indication as to what the funding will flow. So we're kind of stuck in an anticipatory budgeting model. We rely on wage grants as well as hope for township funding. And I think you'd agree it's not the best way to run any budget. But if you want to look at specifics, let's compare payroll. Like most organizations, payroll is the largest part of most expense pies. And you'll see in 2021, yet that number was well offset by the many grants we actually apply for. And in 2021, we had the most people ever on payroll, mostly remote co-op students and summer students we were able to use wage grants for. We applied for magnet grants, federal grants, and provincial grants to cover those amounts. And in 2022, we only had 2 summer students, 2 FTE, and we still accessed grants covering 22% of payroll, including for one of our full-time people. It's not easy to get those grants, and our executive director works very hard to ensure we receive as much as possible. So with about $25,000 in wage grants, we only paid $108,903 in the remaining payroll for 2 full-time people. And that includes the portion we had to pay on top of wage grants for our students. So we actually paid less than $100,000 to employ 2 full-time people, one highly educated and an expert executive director with extensive experience in corporate communications, marketing, and project management. I believe it would be very hard to hire anyone with her skills at less than $100,000 alone, let alone pay 2 people. And I don't think anyone here questions that. I'd like to end on a request that the chamber makes every year and is even stated in our memorandum of understanding. And we know that the budget process is not an easy one for township. And we think you could streamline it by following the lead of other towns who have an ongoing budget line for their chambers with actual built-in yearly increases. That way we can also budget with some assurance of funds being there, and it saves us all some time. We've been told you can't do that in your budget due to some municipal rules or something to that effect. I'd like to understand why other townships can include year-over-year increases for their chambers without having to submit for this extra funding each year. It would certainly save us a lot of time and money, and we know that's exactly what the township is looking to do in its budgets. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyone with any questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, I suppose a question of Director Donaldson, the Finance Director Donaldson, which, if I might be allowed, which would be the question of what would the incremental tax rate impact be were we to extend the 12,000 additional dollars being asked now? If he could do a little quick math on that, and then I guess I have a secondary comment.
Councillor Zavitz, we're not going to ask Director Donaldson to do that now, but we will ask him to make note of the question and report back to us when we meet again in the next council meeting to consider the budget.
Okay. I was wondering about, the environment for that. Okay, well, if it's kind of hard, our hands are tied here. I mean, we are asking the public to participate and give comment, and we hear them, but we don't do anything with it, and we won't do anything with it till the end of the month. And I don't even know what that looks like. When will we have an opportunity to support the additional $12,000 at that time?
We will certainly we'll have the ability to discuss and debate what comes from this listening session. Absolutely.
Okay, so in fact, there will be no outcomes tonight whatsoever asking what impact on tax we may have. Okay, well, that's different.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to move on unless there's another question. I'm going to move on and call on Mr. Jeff Ross, please. There he is, yeah.
Okay.
We can hear you. There you are. We see you as well. Thank you and welcome.
You can hear me. That's great, and see me. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I have a fairly generic and high level comment to make. I'm representing myself and myself only. And that is, I guess like virtually everyone in the township, I don't like to see taxes go up. However, I have a greater concern, and that is the concern for erosion of the services that we expect and need. And in particular, what I'd like to talk about just briefly at this time is the fact that inflation unfortunately exists. We can't do anything about it. It's there and it has to be dealt with. If council, with all of the best intentions, tries to keep tax increases below the rate of inflation, something gets lost. And I commend you all for the work you've been doing on trying to limit the tax increase and keep things down below the rate of inflation. But then something goes in that scenario. And in most cases, what goes is the services. And what we see then is the scenario of a downward spiral where each year taxes are going up, albeit at a level less than the rate of inflation, but taxes are going up and something's going down, and what is likely to be going down is the level of service to the community. the end result of that scenario over years, of course, is not something that any of us, I think, want to see, a continual increase in taxes and a continual erosion of services. There are a great number of services that we could talk about here, and there isn't enough time. So I just want to focus on one. We could talk about the bylaw enforcement. We can talk about the septic inspections and short-term rentals. I just want to focus very briefly on community halls. There are a number of these throughout Township of Muskoka Lakes. They are really the bedrock upon which the various communities, some of which have been in existence for more than 150 years around the township. These are the bedrock that support the small communities throughout Muskoka. They're tremendously important for the people, particularly the full-time residents here. Reducing the funding for these halls really takes away from the quality of life and every part of the existence of the people in those communities. So I encourage you to refrain from saving in very small amounts of money by reducing the services through these community halls in order to try to keep tax levels down below the rate of inflation. I think what we really need is to maintain a whole range of services. The community centers are just one of those, hugely important in ways that would take a long time to discuss here tonight. But that's quite simply my request, is think first about the level of service that people in the township need to maintain the communities that support us all and add to our quality of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very clear on that point. Anyone with any comments or sorry, any questions of Mr. Ross? I see none. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Ms. Donelda Hayes, please, if you're still there.
There she is.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Am I there? Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Hayes, you look right at home there somehow.
Just to switch glasses here. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. Donelda Hayes, 1051 Woodwinds Road. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the budget tonight. The budget is one of the most significant reports that Council can endorse. It's a balancing act between revenue and expenditures, taxation and what people can afford, and respecting the past and looking to the future.
Yeah.
I would like to comment on 4 things this evening. There would have been 5, but the previous delegate just spoke on the importance of community centers, so I'll leave that off. Number 1, I gather from past meetings that pickleball is a very important sport that's played in Muskoka Lakes. It continues to grow in popularity, but there seems to be some thoughts that we have to choose between tennis and pickleball because they are played on similar courts. I'll tell you that pickleball can be played on a tennis court, but tennis cannot be played on a pickleball court. I talked to our local pickleball group here at Walker's Point, Barlocken, and the sharing between the tennis players and the pickleball players seems to be going well. A bit of history for the new councillors: the tennis courts at Walker's Point, Barlocken were originally financed and built by our local tennis court, and there are still many of the original members and their family using it. It should not be council's job to decide whether there should be a pickleball court or a tennis court. It should be council's job to recognize the need of a growing recreational sport and decide where are we going to build the new pickleball courts. And that would be a win for the township. Number 2, there's a new position proposed for Parks and Recreation. Although I do not know the full job description, I understand that they will be looking at programs for community centers. A little history again. About 12 years ago, the township had another new similar position. It did not go well. Both councillors Nishikawa and Edwards were on council at the time and can speak to what caused the failure. As staff may be unaware of these past events, I urge them to hear from the two councillors and fine-tune the job description to ensure a successful outcome. I would hate to see history repeat itself in wasted time, effort, and money, not to mention the community frustration we had last time. Number 3 is our roads. We all drive them, and they are very challenging. They are the only service used by every taxpayer, and the budget should reflect that priority, as well as the roads. Lastly, the most important thing that affects everyone in the township is the bottom line of the budget. I appreciate that budgets are difficult to balance. We have to look to the future and improve our township in ways that best serve our communities. Right now, our communities are hurting. Prices are still high on gasoline, home heating, electrical, groceries. People are being forced to make hard choices to make ends meet. I realize that the projected cost of this budget is only $4.13 per 100,000. But then you add the district increase, the education increase onto that, and you may end up with a substantial tax bill increase. All indicators predict that next year will be a better year with reduced inflation rates. Perhaps this should be the year that you hold off looking at the future, but look at the current situation in making your choices. I would urge that council consider finding ways of reducing the mill rate for this budget and allow our residents a little bit of breathing room. I know they would appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Anyone with questions of Ms. Hayes? No, seeing none. Thanks, Donelda. I appreciate that.
All right.
Okay, I think I'm just going to got someone on here called Graham Hall. If Graham Hall is still there, turn on your mic, turn on your video, and let us know what you're thinking, please. Yeah, down there. Yeah. There we are. We can see you, but you're still on mute, sir. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present a little history about pickleball. It's the fastest growing sport in North America, fastest growing sport in Canada, Ontario, and also in Muskoka. And why is that? Well, basically anybody can enjoy this sport. It's easy to learn regardless of age, level of fitness, or experience playing racket sports. You can just grab a paddle and start playing after one coaching session. Usually other players will be glad to help you with the basics. The growth of pickleball has been phenomenal in the last 5 years. As of January 2022, 1 million Canadians were playing pickleball, and that's up from 650,000 from 2021. That's a whopping increase of 45%. 8% of households report at least one member playing. 45% of the 1 million play about 4 to 5 times per month. The average age of a pickleball player is about 55, but the fastest growing age group is between 18 and 34. The majority of the players are still over 60 and in great health. It's the only sport I know where an 89-year-old woman can play against a teenager and win. This woman also won a silver medal in the 65 plus category in the Ontario Championships in 2019 at the age of 86. The Ontario growth in pickleball is up 70% from 2017 to 2020. And it's now growing at about 30% per year for all age categories. I belong to one local organization, and there's been a 35% growth in 1 year. Wait times are a big big concern these days. You can wait as much as 30 minutes to get on the court after a pickleball game, and that's really not acceptable. We're at the stage where more and more constituents are taking up the sport. With this comes longer wait times between games and frustrated citizens. We need your help to make things better. More courts are the answer for the increased demand. And talk about increased demand, they've also formed in Canada, a pro pickleball league. And the first pro team to be bought was by 3 members of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So big time sport is getting into this sport, into this particular industry. I'm a certified pickleball teaching pro. As of March 1st, I'm already 40% booked for the summer months. And these people are finding me through the internet and just by word of mouth. And I've been instructing since 2018, and I've never been booked this far in advance. So there's a huge, huge demand out there. I'd like to now call Mr. Mayor on my colleague, Patrick Anderson, if you could call on him, and he'll outline what the local area in Muskoka Township really needs. That's
So thank you very much. I will call on Mr. Anderson. I'll check first to make sure no one has questions for you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
I don't see any. No, I don't see any. So Mr. Anderson, is that the name? If you could light your video, and there you are. No. There we go. You're still muted.
Okay. How's that better?
Much better.
Super. Good evening, your worship and councillors. I'm here to supplement what Graham Hall was talking about, and I'm not going to duplicate, and as it's not necessary. I'm a full-time resident. My name is Patrick Anderson. I'm a full-time resident in Bala at 1004 Curry Street. And I want to talk to the sport of pickleball, and I don't know whether people have seen, and I'm holding this up for demonstration purposes. This is a pickleball. It's about the size of a tennis ball. It's hard plastic and it's perforated. And this is a hard surface paddle. That's all you need to play the sport. It's very inexpensive. Anyone can do it. And in fact, it even includes wheelchair pickleball, which is growing tremendously. I was introduced to pickleball I'm also a certified pickleball coach also, as well as Graham. I was introduced to pickleball about 5 years ago. About 4 years ago, I was down in Indian Wells, California, and I took some pro lessons. And I showed up at the courts, what was supposed to be a tennis facility, and walked in and saw nothing but pickleball. And I said to the pro, "What happened to the tennis courts?" He said, "The overwhelming desire for people to play pickleball has taken over down here." He says, all the tennis players, I'm not saying there's no tennis players out there, but he said the bulk of the tennis players that live here in this tennis community have now all picked up a pickleball paddle. It's not to demonstrate that one sport's better than the others. It's just to demonstrate the fact that the movement in pickleball is so great and the numbers are so robust that the amount of pickleball players that are coming to the courts is overwhelming whatever court space is available. You can fit 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. So what they did down there is they converted a lot of the tennis courts. With all due respect to the tennis players, they were left tennis courts and the pickleball players were accommodated. 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. In most games, you play with 4 people. So you're activating 16 people on the space of 1 tennis court. And by activating, I mean, you should see the people that show up to play this sport who normally would never even get involved in organized sports. And they can't help themselves. They have to come back. They have to stay involved. They activate, they socialize. Tremendous benefits associated to it. Since in the TML since 2014, on record, there's over 1,280 individual players that are registered, that have registered. That's one player, one person, not coming back 50 times. That's one player. 1,280 individuals and over 145 youths. In the summer, we played Bala at the Bala Arena and the Port Carling Arena. We're afforded 9 hours per week at the Bala Arena and 9 hours at the Port Carling Arena. And that's moving into the court. It can be an 85-degree, 90-degree heat day prior to you walk into 5 courts on the floor of the rink, and it becomes pretty uncomfortable in that it gets very, very hot very, very quick as people move about. And during the winter times, and there's 2 courts available, one at Milford Bay and one at Walker's Point, and they are basically 2 hybrid courts. Walker's Point has got 2 tennis courts, Milford Bay has 2 tennis courts, and on each one of those venues, 1 court has been set up so that it will afford pickleball play, but on a hybrid type court, by the simple institution of lines on the tennis court. And we appreciate the accommodation.
Mr. Anderson, you have about 40 seconds.
Okay. When people are looking at, and I heard one of the speakers talk about travel. When people are looking to travel, one of the first questions they ask is there pickleball in the area? So all we're asking is in the interim, to look to utilize current outdoor services with some minor tweak in the courts to accommodate pickleball. And also to use the interim, this as an interim plan to supplement and accommodate this growing need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Zavitz, do you have a question? You're on mute.
This button's not working tonight. Thank you, and through you. I firmly agree that there's a recreational need for an additional look at pickleball in our township. I think even on a short-term interim basis until the master recreation plan can get its work done with our new employee, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my thought, Mayor, if I could put this in your lap. How can we, here we are talking budget, so I'd like to quantify for our end of March discussion on some of these items. Here the public is coming forward. How do we put a number to an ask for some interim pickleball facilitation, if you will? Is it possible here and now that we could speak with Director Becking, who would be that person who could speak to this and possibly understand? I mean, we know that the Chamber of Commerce is looking for $12,000. There it is, right? We know what it is. Here, we don't know other than what they're asking for, but we need to put a price to it. And I'm wondering how we do that.
Well, I honestly, I don't know, but that will be a task for Director Donaldson and Director Becking. I would suggest to understand, if I understand correctly, most of the opportunity short-term is converting existing tennis surfaces to pickleball surfaces. Somebody knows how many of those there are still not yet converted and can take a look at which ones might be easily converted. I don't know. Listen, it's a good question. We'll put it on the list and we'll have someone come back to us with some scoping on how this can happen short-term the next time we meet.
Supplemental, if I may?
Sure.
Thank you. I don't know that that's a viable directional piece here. How are staff going to come back at the end of May at our next meeting and put a number to pickleball? Are they going to do that at all? For example, is it 18, let's say for $19,000, Director Becking with some insights feels that we could enhance the pickleball offering by X, so is he going to come and we're going to see a number on the 27th of March that says pickleball $27,000. Maybe, Chamber of Commerce, $12,000. This is really loose and open-ended, and I fear that on the 27th, we won't be any further ahead. We won't know a number.
Well,
So I don't know how we.
I suspect it'll be something along the lines of what you came up with. I don't think the numbers are right, but I suspect they'll come back with hard numbers, and we'll have choices to make at that time that we don't have right now because we don't have the information.
Okay, great. I'm satisfied with that answer, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your input. I'm going to call on, we have someone down here as Linda and Alan Edwards, and I'm going to assume it's Linda Edwards. Alan Edwards is saying, no, not you, not Linda. Is there a different Linda Edwards?
No, she is just watching. That's
Oh,
all.
okay, that's fine. That's good.
And
Okay.
that-
All right, that's good. Then I'm going to go to Sandra Morris, please, if you're still there. There we are. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks ever so much for inviting this input and comments. And thank you very much for the budget presentation, which was really helpful. I'm Sandra Morris. I'm at 8 Stephen Road here in Port Carling. I just wanted to comment really briefly on something that has not yet been addressed, which relates to the question of the environment. I think it goes without saying, we all of us who live here in Muskoka Lakes know and understand that the natural environment is really what defines this beautiful region. The lakes, wetlands, and forests are truly what attracted all of us here, what brings visitors here. And they're important not only to this region, they're important to the province, to the country, and arguably globally. And there are statistics that would support this. For example, Canada has a quarter of the world's wetlands. The majority of those are in Ontario. Unfortunately, Ontario has lost approximately 70% of its original wetlands, particularly in the south. So the remaining wetlands in Muskoka and in the north are critically important, even globally. We all know, of course, that the environment is under threat. Council, I think, recognized this and wisely put protecting the natural environment as well as cultural assets as a top priority in the strategic plan, and the issue of the environment factored into the municipal election. I believe, Mayor Kelley, that you, recognizing this, wisely proposed the idea of developing an environmental plan during the municipal election, and I am commenting today to say that I strongly support, and I believe I would not be alone in supporting that such a measure. And I would like to suggest, with respect to council, that I think it would be an important initiative to consider for the budget and arguably for the 2023 budget. It's the kind of initiative that could pay dividends not only over the term of council, but long into the future. And I think it could be undertaken. Unfortunately, just thinking about Councillor Zavitz's question, I did not come with a number to propose. I believe this is an initiative that could be undertaken with creativity, drawing on local experts and inputs. But it would pay dividends, as I say, not only over the term of council, but beyond. And would create a vehicle to help empower council to make wise decisions about what bylaws you adopt to protect the environment, and what measures we take to enforce those bylaws. And it would provide a vehicle through which we could understand the health of the environment as it is today and going forward, and really take concrete steps to protect that. And so I just respectfully urge council to give that serious consideration as you develop the budget this year. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you very much. Really terrific comments. Anybody with any questions for Ms. Morris? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your input, and we'll move on to the next. Saley Lawton. I'm pronouncing that right, Saley Lawton. See any? Okay. There we go, coming in. Yeah. I'm just gonna call him. We can see that you're on the screen, but we have no video, we have no sound. There we are. We have
Right.
both now. Yeah, we can hear you. Good. That's great.
And you can just see the top of my head. Thank you, Mr. Council, for allowing me to speak on an issue of great importance to my family and to, I think, the community of Muskoka. My concern is your decision to, in a cost-cutting measure, to eliminate the goose patrol for the beaches in Muskoka Lakes, including Windermere, where I live for 6 months of the year, and Hannah's Beach and Bala. Now, as I understand it, last year, the goose patrol was cancelled, and the evidence was very clear that the patrol was cancelled. Goose patrol comes in every morning to clear up goose excrement on the beaches, on the docks, and also on the walkways. The fact that it was cancelled last year was it was awful, because goose poop is not pleasant. It affects our water, or the quality of our water, but also it makes being on the beach, being on the docks, just a minefield. Now, as I understand it, council decided to eliminate $60,000, the cost of the goose patrol for the season. And I would earnestly ask you to reconsider this decision. The beach is well used, it's well liked. Kids come here, people bring their children, people swim. People, you know, as I said, it's a very, very well-used beach. And without the cleaning necessary by Goose Patrol, it makes makes using the beach essentially unusable. So I would sincerely ask you to reconsider your decision and reinstate the $60,000 for Goose Patrol. Goose Patrol is a company out of Bracebridge. In the past, they've done a very, very thorough job of cleaning up the beaches in Muskoka Lakes. They use dogs, well-trained dogs, to frighten the geese off, and they tend to do their work first thing in the morning, so that their activity is is imperceptible to a lot of people. But as I said, last year it was decided not to use them, and the evidence was very clear that they were not clean. The beaches were not being cleaned. I think that we are destined to have Canada geese in our areas. I would, in an ideal world, I would prefer that they're not being there, but they are year round now in Muskoka, and their population is growing. So I do believe I do believe that I mean, rather than, you know, I bet the best alternative would be to try and get rid of them altogether. But second best is to employ a company to clean our beaches. We owe it to, I think, the people who come here. We mentioned the importance of tourism to Muskoka Lakes. And I do believe that it's very important that the beaches and surrounding areas be kept clean of goose excrement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, a recurring theme of mine tonight, I suppose. But again, I would ask the end of the month, how does this particular topic come up as it relates to the fact that we have, as a committee and therefore council, have made a decision to not include the 60,000. How do I possibly ask Director Becking in this environment, what would we get for $30,000, for example? I mean, it's on horse trading, but you know, we're looking at budgets. Is that a question that you would allow? I mean, could Director Becking, who I see is here on the call, could he speak to that, or is that something you want to wait for?
No, we're going to wait. You can probably ask him between now and that meeting if he wants to do the homework and find out what the impact would be of having the budget. But we're not going to direct any questions to staff tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two left. We're going to mess up this name, I'm sure. Tom Grajnar. There we are.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. My name is Tom Grainer, and my address is 1091 Stroud Beach Road. I am commenting on the draft 2023 operating budget on behalf of the Muskoka Ratepayers Association. It is often helpful to provide some historical perspective to better understand and plan for one's future. The MRA would like to comment on the operations budgets of the last three councils in their forgiveness year. In 2015, operating expenses were $9.25 million. In 2019, they increased 37%. And in the draft 2023 budget, they are up 63% over 2015. Just as a comparison, the levy from 2015 to draft 2023 is up 64%. All this over a time frame that saw annual inflation in the 1% to 2% range. Some months were even deflationary. The real inflation ramp up started in the spring of 2021 and seems to have peaked last summer. It is currently trending downward. From the end of 2014 to the end of 2022, the consumer price index increased 23% versus the projected TML spend increase of 63%, with relatively minor changes in service levels. This helped to reinforce the MRA's perception that governments find it very easy to spend other people's money. The MRA is going to spend most of our allocated time commenting on the TML's major spend, wages and benefits. In 2015 and 2019, wages and benefits represented about 55% and 52% respectively of total expenditures. In the draft budget for 2023, wages and benefits are 62% of total expenditures, excluding earmarks. The MRA finds these trends totally unacceptable. The TML has earmarked 4 additional positions that are unbudgeted enhancements. Council should be acutely aware that each added employee is a multi-million-dollar expense, not just a partial wage in the year they are hired. The MRA has never seen a right sizing of government departments. Adding an employee is always that gift that keeps on consuming taxpayer dollars in perpetuity. The addition of the septic inspector in 2023 shows no costs, but the anticipated permit fees that are collected in future years. The MRA asks the obvious question: what about office furniture, computers, office space, and vehicle for an inspector? What and where are these costs considered? This budget is proposing an almost 7% cost of living adjustment for salaried employees. The MRA believes that the provincial and federal governments, as well as private industry, are looking at this pandemic surge in inflation to be temporary. Belt tightening is expected, especially for those who are still employed during a recession. The MRA does not want to seem cruel, but TML salaried staff enjoy relatively secure tenure. They get added compensation via pay band adjustments, and every 4 or 5 years, every salaried job is examined against peer groups and compensation is adjusted. The MRA does not recollect adjustments ever being revised downward. The MRA would also like to point out that many of the numbers above are probably much better than indicated for TML salaried personnel, because about a third of the township workforce are hourly paid employees locked into multi-year contracts that dictate wage increases in the 2% range, a long way from that proposed for salaried employees. Council needs to thoroughly review staffing levels and compensation practices independently of staff, recommended and appointed compensation consultants. The MRA is pleased that after our comments last year, Director of Financial Services Mark Donaldson has retendered the TML insurance policies to the benefit of a 40% reduction in premiums. The MRA hopes this is not just a teaser rate and is sustainable over multiple years. However, the TML must ensure our risk mitigation practices are top drawer and being incorporated to minimize claims and premium increases. The last point we hopefully have time to make is the $25,000 approved in the capital budget to paint railroad bridges in Bala. The MRA does not believe the TML should capitalize costs to paint a third party's bridge. We believe it should be expensed and that the money should be appropriated from the funds SREL provided for the benefit of people in Bala. Hopefully something appropriate like a mural or slogan can be designed and get CP's approval to amplify the benefit. The MRA thanks Council for the opportunity to present our input on the 2023 TML operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Grainer, and I apologize for butchering your name the first time.
No problem.
Anyone with questions for Mr. Grainer? Seeing none, I'll thank you again, and we'll move to our last, I think our last. If I'm mistaken, somebody will have to speak up. The only tag I have on here is N. Bury. N-B-U-R-Y. It's like playing bingo. There we go, coming up. There we are, we see you, and you're still on mute, sir.
Mute. Okay.
There, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I thank you for allowing me to talk. My name is James Stanbury. I live at 1010 Spring Street in Raymond. I had 4 issues that I wanted to talk about. 2 of them have been covered. I support Jeff's comments on the support for community halls, and I also support the item about the goose patrol, because I believe that is very important. The 2 issues that I have remaining are 2 different, come from 2 different areas. Number 1, I am a hall member on the Raymond Hall Board. And I am quite disappointed that the hall boards do not seem to have any input as to budgetary things. I will give an example, 2 examples. One, we would have liked to have had input on the new renovations that were going on at the Raymond Hall. I understand it's designated previously by council as a warming center, but it doesn't include some of the items that a warming center should have, such as showers. When I inquired about this, I was told, oh, it's too late. It's been done now. It's not, it's in the progress, and it could have been easily modified there. Secondly, our hall board had submitted a few requests for items to be put into our budget. And the example of not being listened is this. We had asked for a notice board to be put up outside the hall. We discovered that the Lions Club had one outside the store in Windermere, not being used anymore. And we had said that the Lions were willing to donate it over to Raymond Hall. We just needed some posts for it to be put onto. We had asked for a meeting to have some input with the Lions, the hall board, and the town. And the town, the maintenance department decided that they would exclude the Lions Club and the hall board, went and looked at the board that we were proposing and deemed it not suitable, which fine, but we weren't given any reasons why, and we weren't allowed to have any input. Why are we having hall boards to help suggest things that the boards need or that the halls need, and then we're ignored by town employees? So that was my second issue. Sorry, my last issue has to do with, I understand that the council is considering increasing fees for using town community centers. The Lions Club, of which I am a member of the Windermere and District Lions Club, have enjoyed a discount on fees because we are a Lions Club in the past, and I'm hoping that that will not disappear. But I think that Lions Clubs and any other service club that contribute to the community and to the town should actually be exempt from any of the fees. I'll give you an example. We in Windermere are number one. We're the smallest of the and poorest of the Lions Clubs within the town, also within Muskoka. We contribute by in number of ways. We contribute by donating back to the communities. We help people in need. We help various other organizations within the area with the proceeds that we get from our fundraising. I understand that there's a food bank over in Glen Orchard, which has taken over a community center. The food bank does not pay rent of any kind for that, which is fine. But the Lions Clubs, and not only ours, but the other ones in the district, are large contributors to the food banks in the way of funds to help with their expenses. So we contribute back to the community. Secondly, I'll give you another example. Our club has a barbecue which can be pulled behind a vehicle, and we make it available for other groups to be able to use. This past year, we loaned it to the town or various groups in the town 4 times to be used for various functions, okay? We pay for the propane for it. We don't ask for a fee. If we get a donation back towards the cost, that is wonderful. We received, out of the 4 items, we received a $40 donation from the fire department when they used it, and no other fees came back to us.
Mr. Stanbury, you're going to have to wrap up if you could, please.
Well, that's what I'm finishing. So we as a Lions Club give back to the community and we give to the town. We are asking if you would consider our exemptions for fees to any clubs that contribute back to the town and to the public. And that's all I have to ask for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the input. Anyone with any questions for Mr. Stanbury? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Stanbury, roughly how much do the Lions give back to the community compared to what they're paying?
Well, if you're asking how much on a hall rental, I would say the hall rentals, and I will be talking to council next week on this as well, but the hall rentals, I would say we give probably back 10 times as much as what we have paid in hall rentals. And this year we've had an increase because the hall that we usually rent, which is Raymond, is non-functional at the moment for our turkey dinner coming up this coming Saturday. And both the other halls in this area do not have stoves that we can use. So we have had to move our event down to the southern portion, or the mid portion, I guess, to Milford Bay. Our hall expense has gone from, I'm going to estimate about $68 for what we used to pay, up to $275 for this year's hall. And that's with a 50% discount. So it cuts into the amount of money that we can then donate back to the various causes in the community and to help people.
Okay, and a supplemental?
Sure.
The notice board that you were asking for, did you have a cost on that?
No, I did not.
Did that go in? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stanbury. I don't see anybody else's hand up, so I'll thank you very much, and we will move on from here. Council, we have, I believe, a couple of resolutions. You'll be happy to know, I think one's for adjournment.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do have a couple of things to look after next. One of them is relating to the appointment of a clerk to the Township of Muskoka Lakes. And it is moved by Councillor Mazan and seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-022, being a bylaw to appoint a clerk for the Township of Muskoka Lakes and to repeal bylaw 2021-167, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any discussion, any question? All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. I'll just sign that one. Okay, and we're going to confirm the proceedings of this evening. Moved by Councillor Zabit, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-2025 to confirm the proceedings of special council on March the 7th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, and then finally, last one. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that special council adjourn at 8:58 p.m. and the next regular meeting of council will be held on Wednesday, March 15, 2023 at 1 p.m. electronically from the council chambers, municipal offices in Port Carling, Ontario. All in favor? All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for hanging in and getting through that in one quick pass. Lots of good information, and we'll wait to see